And
My
we are
theory
jumping
lives
around
on,
to
Mike.
what's that?
My theory, the NBA is somewhat fixed because there's no way they were going to let both these series be sweeps.
That would have been a long time without basketball. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, well, I think didn't we have that last year? I feel like last year or the year before was like sweep because we had like a week. It was like a week and a few days before the finals started, and it was just like this is ridiculous. And we might still be a week out if Dallas wins on Thursday. We'll be a week. They'll have a whole week to rest, which would be listen. This would have been a huge win for Dallas, getting Luca a week, 9 days off with his knee situation.
Lively.
Kleba would have had lively Kleba. They worked him back in tonight, a little bit. So yeah, like this would have been a big one for them to close out. But Minnesota said no soup for you, and they decided to take it back to Chuck's got to bring his butt back to Minnesota, Mike.
Does got to get another suit. Draymond's done though. Did you hear that right at the end of the game? That I guess he was only here for 4 games, so he's not going back to Minnesota with the NBA, the
Well,
whatever.
that's good. I
He's
mean,
not
I'll,
going
I'll
back.
be honest. I've been playing a lot or been watching a lot of the game on mute, just because, and not really paying attention. I catch the post game interviews of Chuck and them if there's something funny that happens, but I haven't been paying as much attention. Um, my kids have been staying up later, so just haven't been able to watch much of the pre games and halftime shenanigans, Mike. But I did get to watch this whole game, so that's exciting. I was excited about that. This is I think the first game I've watched from beginning to end this round of the playoffs for any game. So that was big.
This was a good game. I mean, every game in this series, I know that it's obviously been 3-0 heading into tonight, and a lot of people, I think, thought it was over and that it was going to finish tonight. But these 4 games have all been really entertaining. I know that I texted you. We talked. I don't think last week we were just. I think we were still in prediction mode, right? We hadn't played a game when we
That
started
is
last week.
that is correct. No games have been played yet.
But I texted you during the first game. I'm like, this series is going to be a really good series. And although the game score doesn't necessarily reflect that, the fact that Minnesota has been winning with 5 minutes to go in each of these first 4 games indicates sort of the closeness of this series. And I think you could probably point and say the same thing on the Boston side of it, although I think there's clearly a big difference between those two teams, a much bigger difference than there is between Minnesota and Dallas. But just the simple fact that Minnesota has been leading with 5 minutes to go in the fourth quarter of all 4 of these games tells you that the Timberwolves are not that far off. And obviously tonight they were able to close it out and make some plays down the stretch that they were unable to make previously. And in all honesty,
Like
they didn't play.
I'm almost willing to say that while they did make plays down the stretch, it was more of the fact that Dallas didn't make plays down the stretch. I'm not like Kyrie
Yes,
was pitiful.
I know what
Luca
you're
was.
getting.
I mean,
Yeah.
other than Luca's Hail Mary 3-and-1, he missed a free throw there. That was a huge miss. Um, yeah, I don't know. I think Dallas.
There were definitely some Dallas miscues. I mean, the Kyrie turnover, throwing it with his left hand through the middle of the lane to I don't know who he was trying to go to with that pass. And
There was
Minnesota,
Luca. Well, Luca had one at the top of the key, was trying to go to the corner, and it got Kyle Anderson stolen. That whole fact that lineup was out there, and they didn't like take advantage of it. I mean, you didn't have Anthony Edwards or Cat in to start the fourth quarter, and Dallas did nothing with that lineup. Like, uh, Gobert's been terrible, Mike. He's so bad. Like Luca, the fact that he's the defensive play. I mean, I understand it's a situational thing, but he's been so bad on the defensive end. They've been able. Luca just can. You're disagreeing with me on this, Mike?
look, okay. So here's my question for you. So in the game winner that Luca hits in game 2, and I know everybody's like, "Oh, go Bears on skates," and Luca put him in the washing machine and shook him up and this and that, and Luca hits the step back three. If you watch that play, in all honesty, like part of the problem is that just Gobert is 7'4", and so when he moves, he's just super awkward in his movements. And if you really watch though that shot, like I don't know that you could ask somebody to contest a Luca step back three in all honesty because of Gobert's length. Now, yeah, he Luca created a lot of separation, which is obviously what the step back is designed to do. But if you watch just that play, I mean, Gobert's hand is right there where you would want it to be. And sure, could he have had a little bit closer distance from his body to Luca's body? Sure, but he's also a 7'4" dude, and you're risking getting into Luca's body and having Luca land
Well,
on your foot or whatever, and then all of a sudden
how
that's
about
a
this
foul.
argument? He's been taken advantage of twice in the last 3 possessions. Get him out of the game.
Look, there's something to be said for that. Here's what I would say is of the three centers. Now, look, Towns had, they don't win the game tonight without Towns. And the three threes he hit and that little stretch that he had before he fouled out, you clearly don't win the game tonight without Cat. So kudos to him for coming through, at least in that 4 minute
Key
stretch
moments,
in
yeah.
the fourth quarter. Yeah. I mean, he's been terrible the whole series and was shooting sub 30% until tonight. And even tonight, he still had a ton of stupid fouls. He still drove to the basket and had two charges. He still is awkward. But that 4 minute stretch from about the 7 minute mark to the 3.5 minute mark when he fouled out was huge from Karl Anthony Towns. But if I'm Minnesota, to me, their best big man is Naz Reid. And I don't think it's even close at this point when you factor in what he does at both ends of the floor. And to get back to your point, like, look, Gobert is never going to look pretty because of the way he moves. He's just gangly. And at 7'4", he's awkward. And if you put a 7'4" guy out in space trying to cover a guard or trying to guard a guy as skilled as Luca, he's not going to look beautiful doing it. And there's going to be times where he looks downright foolish. But in all honesty, like I don't feel like he's getting blown by and just completely abused. I think the bigger problem is what he does to your offense if you're Minnesota, because he really he's gumming it up. And when he catches the ball, it's not like he can take advantage of switches where he's got a mismatch and a little guy because he really has no discernible post moves. I know he got Luca the one time in the post, and Luca kind of hooked his arm and then went straight up. And honestly, I think actually on the shot, Luca was probably right. He didn't foul him, even though he had him hooked earlier. But the fact that Gobert, with a 8-inch height advantage over Luca, can't just take him and drop step and shoot a jump hook over him or have some kind of go-to move. To me, I think the bigger problem for Minnesota is Gobert on the offensive end. And obviously Towns has been, until tonight, terrible on offense. And I think Naz Reid gives you sort of the best of those two guys. I would find more minutes for Naz Reid and cut the minutes of Towns and Gobert, although Towns has basically cut his own minutes throughout the series just by being in foul trouble and committing his usual bevy of silly fouls. But to me, Naz Reid has to play more.
Yeah, I agree. Like, he should almost not be the sixth man of the year. He should be on the floor enough minutes to not be the sixth man of the year. And I don't even know if I don't know how that whole thing works. Like, if he doesn't technically start, but he comes off the bench and plays starter minutes, does
There's a
that
certain
matter at
there's
all or no?
no, it doesn't. There's a certain number of games that you can't start. I forget what that number is. It's something like if you start more than, I think it's a third. I think if you start more than a third of the games, don't quote me on that, but there's some arbitrary figure
I'm gonna
that
quote you on
if
it.
you
I'm gonna post it all over Twitter. I'm gonna
all right,
freezing cold takes. And if you're wrong,
sounds
no, I'm just
good.
kidding. I'm just kidding. I'm
It's
joking.
somewhere in that range, I guess is my point. So
Yeah.
look, Naz Reid played 20 minutes tonight. I think you got to find more minutes for him than that, in my opinion. I think he's been more effective throughout, not just this series. He was more effective, I think, in the Denver series in a lot of ways. And look, I don't dislike Gobert as much as you do, but I understand the points that you're making. I just think that part of it sometimes is just how funky he looks because of how big he is. And that makes what happens to him look a lot worse than maybe what happens to a guy who's more athletic, coordinated, better movement than what Gobert is capable of doing. But I do think, like, again, even on that step back in game 2 that Luka hits to win the game, uh, I don't know. Yeah, could Gobert have closed the distance between him and Luka? Sure, but I think he did about as good of a job as you could possibly ask, especially of a 7'4" dude who's out isolated against arguably one of the most difficult offensive players to defend in the whole league. I mean, there's not many guys that are out there on the perimeter that are going to be better than Luka at trying to get to the shot that he wants to get, despite the fact that Luka is pretty much all craft and no quickness, no speed. He's just using his smarts, his footwork, his intelligence, and then his strength to just kind of hold guys off and get to where he wants to go. So I don't mind Gobert's defense as much as maybe you do. I think offensively is more where I wonder what
Come on,
he's
he had
really
that
bringing
nice
to the
finger
table.
roll at the end, near the end of the game there.
There you go. That was beautiful. And he was 5 for 9 from the line. I mean, every one of his free throws is an adventure. Like, I'm
It's
constantly
kind
wanting
of
to
fun
look
to
at his
watch.
form. I'm surprised he
What's
makes. I'm surprised he makes
it's
any of
it's
them.
it's more it's what's much which is must more much see TV? Is it Rudy Gobert at the free throw line, or Jose Ramirez every time he steps to the plate right now, Mike?
I have no idea what Jose Ramirez is doing when he steps to the plate right now.
He's on a tear, Mike. You don't know this?
I
He's
do.
on pay. He's on. So Manny Ramirez has the most RBIs in season for Guardians in MLB history. He's on pace for right at Manny Ramirez number,
So
165
he's
RBIs.
he's still on the Indians. Jose Ramirez.
Jose Ramirez is still on the Indians.
All right, cool. There we go.
Yes,
Nice.
Mike follows baseball very well. You know, you use a bat.
I'm
It's made out of wood.
following it very closely. Yeah. Do they still make the bats out of ash? Or since we have the emerald ash borer, are they all gone? Do they have to make it out of something else? Hickory?
I don't know. I don't know. Get it. I just was in Louisville. I guess I should have gone into the Louisville Slugger
You
and
should have. You
seen
could
that,
have
but
found out. Could have figured it out.
no. But
Might have
anyway,
been the best
sorry,
way to go.
sorry, baseball. But listen,
That's too much baseball talk for me.
anyways, the bottom line is this: like, does Minnesota have any shot to win this series? Right? No.
I think they
Or
do.
oh yes,
I think they
that's what I
do.
like to hear. That's what I
I
like
think
to
they
hear.
do. So here's why, right? I mean, clearly, if you go back and like, let's go back to last night, and we'll talk more about the Celtics Pacers game. But even if Indiana wins that game last night, right, and it's 3-1, Boston has 2 out of 3 at home, and the odds of Indiana winning 2 out of 3, or sorry, winning all 3 of those games, including 2 on
And
the
they
road.
fumbled 3 of those 2 of the games before
Right.
last
I
night.
mean,
They
which we can talk about that. But again, I guess my point, greater than Indiana actually coming back, those two teams are separated in a much larger way than these two teams are. I mean,
It's
clearly,
the Grand Canyon for those two teams. It's
correct.
like the Grand Canyon.
Nobody thinks that Indiana. Nobody went into that series thinking that
We're,
Indiana was gonna win that series or was anywhere close to Boston as a
we're
team, and that was with Tyrese Halliburton.
yeah. That series was like the Grand Canyon. This series is like the crack in the sidewalk, like when you're
Yeah,
walking. Like like
absolutely.
the margin for different like this. I don't know what's the word I'm saying. Different outcomes is very very small. Like
So, yeah,
and
in the
once
case
again,
for Minnesota,
Minnesota's had the lead in every game, right? In the
yeah,
fourth
with 5
quarter.
minutes to go. Yeah, exactly. And
So
the case for Minnesota is they've been obviously a great road team. They win 3 games in Denver against the defending champions in that series to win it, including a game 7 on the road. So now you're looking at it. If you're Minnesota, you say, okay, we come home for game 5, and it's a home game. Our crowd's going to be behind us. Theoretically, road on in home games, the role players play better. So if you're Minnesota, the confidence level has to be at least relatively high. Again, as you said, and I said multiple times, they've been ahead with 5 minutes to go in all 4 of these games. They only were able to finish one of them. But going home, you have to feel pretty confident. Now, suddenly, if Minnesota wins game 5, now you're back in Dallas for game 6. And Dallas in a game 6 would have to feel at least a little bit of pressure. Not that Minnesota's not feeling pressure, right? Because they're going to play 3 straight if it goes that far 3 straight elimination games.
Well,
And
4.
game 6,
It would be 4 straight.
4 straight. Yeah, sorry. So Dallas would feel that pressure in game 6, even though for them that wouldn't be an elimination game. But at the same time, clearly Dallas, I think, at least, and again, you don't know what's going on inside the locker room and with their coaching staff and their players, but on the outside, almost all the talk that we've heard to this point, like any podcast that I listened to in the days since the Timberwolves Mavericks, there was a lot of talk of, well, when the Mavericks play the Celtics and then either the host or the guest or somebody would jump in and go, "Oh, let's just, let's maybe wait a second. Like it's not over yet." But the connotation was that it was over. So everybody, I think, thought Dallas was either A, going to win tonight, or B, going to win the series, which obviously is a pretty good pick considering that teams that have gone up 3-0 are 155-0 in NBA history. So it seems like a pretty likely outcome that Dallas is going to win this series. But if Dallas has to go back home for game 6 and there's all this, we've counted our chickens before they're hatched, that's going to be a game where there's going to be certainly pressure on Dallas. Now, are Luka and Kyrie going to be hugely affected by that pressure? I don't know. Their collective experience and their ability to come through in big moments would tell you probably not. But could that maybe affect some of their role guys? If Minnesota's won 2 in a row and they're coming back and they can say to themselves, we won 3 against the defending champs on the road. Now all we got to do is beat this Dallas team once. We've got a game 7 at home. And in the last round, we won a game 7 on the road against the defending champs. I think there's a path for Minnesota to win this series. And I think the other thing that would give me confidence of Minnesota is, sure, you got a good Towns game tonight, but you still had some dumb things that Towns did. Like, you certainly haven't had a great Towns game. Like, tonight's a good Towns game. He shoots 9 for 13, but he only played 30 minutes because he was in foul trouble. He had 4 turnovers. He still did a lot of dumb Karl Anthony Towns things. So maybe tonight is the best you can expect if you're Minnesota from Towns. And clearly that stretch in the fourth quarter was huge. They don't win it without his threes, and he had the nice drop-off pass to Gobert. So maybe this is the best you can get from Towns. But Edwards tonight, look, he had a near triple-double. He had 29, 10, and 9. But he still only shot 11 of 25 from the field. And he's been nowhere near his 5 of 8 from the line. He's been nowhere near as good as he was in the Phoenix series and then in the first, 5 games of the Denver series. Now, he looked better in these 2 games in Dallas as far as just the way he looked physically. He looked really tired in the 2 home games in Minnesota. I mean, he just looked like he was gassed from the Nuggets series. And so if you're Minnesota, what you're saying to yourself is, we have yet to get the quintessential Anthony Edwards huge game. Maybe that game's coming where he puts in 40, but we haven't seen it yet in this series. And maybe you get a good game from Towns and the other guys, the role players, play well in one or multiple of these remaining games if we get multiple games. So I think there's definitely a path for Minnesota to win. Now, their margin for error is obviously very small. One bad game by Anthony Edwards and you're out. One poor shooting game by your role players and you're out. One huge game from Luka and or Kyrie and you're probably out. But the path for them to get back in this series and to win it is still there. I don't expect that to happen, but it's not completely out of the realm of possibility. Whereas if Indiana had won last night, you'd ask me the same question. I'd have said, I just don't see any pathway for Indiana to get there. I do see a pathway for Minnesota. So I don't know what your thoughts are as far as whether you think that can happen or what the realistic notion is of that taking place.
Everything you said to right now just makes a lot of sense. Like, I think Dallas wins the series. Would I love for it to go to a game 7? I would. I just think it's really, really hard, especially how inexperienced this Minnesota team is, like in the playoffs. Listen, Kyrie, like you mentioned, Kyrie had a terrible game tonight, but Kyrie's not going to probably do that 2 games in a row, right? Like he's not going to have that bad of a game in
No, you
game
wouldn't think
5.
so. I would think that if Minnesota wins Game 5, Minnesota's going to win Game 5 on the backs of their team playing well, as opposed to kind of what happened tonight, where Kyrie and Luca Luca had a triple double and did a lot of amazing things. I'll tell you the one most amazing thing that he did, just as it pops into my head. Did you see the pass where he was going? It was in the second half,
Yes,
I
when
think.
he went drove to the lane, he kicked it, and the
Yeah,
guy,
with his
yeah,
left hand.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
it
yeah.
was it was ridiculous. Like he was almost on the ground. He threw it through like four hands. I think he passed it to Kyrie, and I think he missed the three.
He did
That's why
miss the
they
three
never.
in the he missed the 3 in the
Yeah,
corner.
no, it was on the wing. It was on the right. He caught it on the right wing. Kyrie or
Oh yeah,
Luca
yeah,
was
yeah,
driving.
yeah, right.
Luca was driving
Yeah,
left. He caught it on
okay.
the right wing. It was incredible. But anyway, I guess my point is that I think if Minnesota wins Game 5, they're going to have to win it on the backs of Anthony Edwards and Towns playing well, as opposed to counting on Kyrie and Luca not playing well. If that makes sense. I mean, those guys they're gonna have to play a good game. I don't think they're going to be able to get away with a mediocre game certainly from Edwards. I guess Towns, depending on how many minutes he plays and what you get from the other guys, from your other two bigs, and whether Naz Reid has a big game, then maybe you don't need Towns as much. But Edwards is going to have to go for a game. I mean, worst case scenario to play the way he did tonight. And we're talking about a guy that almost had a near triple double, but he's going to have to be at least that good, if not better, as a scorer. But if he does that and they're at home, again, theoretically, their role players should play better at home. And look, I won't be surprised if they win. I won't be surprised if they win Game 5. I really won't.
Yeah, listen, I wouldn't either. I still just think Dallas wins this series. I just think it's too hard to win 4 in a row. I
Yeah,
I don't care
the
who
margin
you
for
are.
error is too small. Yeah, the margin for error is probably too small. Like I said, there's a million things that have to go right 3 games in a row in order for them to come back. And it's just interesting how when you start thinking about the narratives and where this series started and where we are now and where potentially we go depending on what the outcome is. So you start the series and look, Edwards didn't play super well in the last 2 games of that Denver series, but coming off that series, everybody's talking about, man, is this going to be the summer of Anthony Edwards? And can he at 22 lead Minnesota, who just beat the defending champions? And everybody kind of looked at that and thought, man, maybe this is the NBA Finals right here. Minnesota gets there. And I know I picked Minnesota. And if they win the NBA championship, certainly Anthony Edwards, you would have to think, is in line to be the NBA Finals MVP if they're somehow able to come back. Or thinking back to the
Yeah,
beginning of the series, that's what everybody was talking about. And then you obviously have the Olympics and all these things. And then suddenly he doesn't play very well in the first 2 games, plays terrible, looks tired, looks beaten down, plays a little better in Game 3. They still don't win. And everybody's kind of down, like, oh, this is what you expect. Like, he's going to follow the same pattern as everybody else. He's not going to be this outlier guy that suddenly at 22, that nobody else in the history of the league was really able to, at that age, kind of be the number one guy on a championship team. And that was kind of the narrative before tonight. And now, look, tonight he comes back, plays well. And maybe if he plays well in the next game and they lose, then we're still on the face of Anthony Edwards' incredible postseason and just has to pay his dues at age 22, is not ready. But if Minnesota somehow comes back from 3-0 and beats Dallas, and then they go to the NBA Finals, all that stuff is still in front of him in terms of what potentially he could accomplish. Now, there's a huge way to go. Karl Anthony Towns, there was a lot of talk of his redemption right after the Denver series. Like, oh, he's finally starting to figure it out. He's getting it together. And then, other than really this, whatever, 5-minute stretch in this game for this series, he's been pretty much horrendous and pretty much the same Karl Anthony Towns that we've seen for the entirety of his career, with stupid fouls and dumb turnovers and whiny faces and all the things that kind of go with the Karl Anthony Towns experience. So those two guys, their narrative has almost flipped game to game. And then on the other side, you go to Dallas and Kyrie, obviously everybody including us last year when Dallas got Kyrie, there was no question that we thought that it probably wasn't going to work. And as much as I've said over the years on the podcast, I know you've echoed my sentiments that Kyrie's like the perfect guy to be your second banana because he can play off the ball, he can shoot off the catch, and when you need him to cook, he can cook on his own. And he just has had so many weird off the court things and strange injuries and statements and all the things. We don't have to go through the whole litany of things that he's done, but nobody saw that coming. And now suddenly, as this series has gone on, everybody's like, wow, Kyrie. And he didn't really even play that well last series against Oklahoma City. So there's been an up and down with him. And then, of course, Luka, everybody knows what he's been, and he's been great in every playoffs he's been in. And there's the question about the injury. But there's been a lot of talk in the last couple of days of, is Luka now the best player in the world? And certainly if he goes on and they win this series and they beat the Celtics, there certainly probably is a discussion to be had about where he sits in that hierarchy. Clearly, he's in the top four, but there was a lot of talk in the last couple of days of, is he the best player in the game? Will he supplant Jokic if they win the title? And look, it's certainly a conversation that we'll probably at some point have if that's what ends up happening. But it's just interesting how quickly from one game to one game or one series to one series, how much the narratives have sort of jumped back and forth on all these guys just based on their performance in a game or two. And so it'll be interesting to see what happens moving forward.
Yeah. So where do you think this ends up, Mike? What do you think happens?
I really think Minnesota's going to get game five. I really do. And I find it, I find it difficult to believe then that Minnesota can win the last two, that they're going to beat Dallas in Dallas and then beat Kyrie and Luka in a game seven. But again, I certainly didn't see them beating Denver in game seven in Denver. So, I mean, I'm going to say Mavs in six.
Yeah, that makes the most sense to me. But I want to be different. I'm gonna say Mavs in seven, Mike. I think
Man, if it
it's
goes,
Mavs and
if it gets to seven, all right. So think back to last year. You have Miami and Boston. Miami goes up 3-0. That was more a case almost of like the Pacers Celtics this year, right? Where everybody thought Miami was inferior to the Celtics last year. And Miami goes up 3-0, and then Boston storms back, and then Miami kills them in game seven. Now, Tatum got injured early in that game and tweaked his ankle and kind of wasn't the same. But so that would portend a Dallas game seven victory, even if Minnesota was able to creep all the way back. But man, if Minnesota wins the next three and they force a game seven, you'd have to think that the entire tenor of the series has shifted, which I know, again, it's the same thing that happened in Miami and Boston last year. And each game is kind of an entity of itself. But something tells me if Dallas lets this get to a game seven, that Minnesota on their home floor, crazy crowd, the opportunity to close out another team in a game seven. I don't know, man. I think
yeah.
I might, if it gets to seven, I think I might pick Minnesota. So I'm going to stick with Dallas in six. But if Minnesota somehow gets it to a game seven, I think I'd pick Minnesota with game seven at home.
Well, if it gets to a game seven, we will definitely be recording an episode before next Tuesday so that we can predict what's going to happen. So that's what I think we do.
Yeah, that sounds like a plan. That sounds like a plan to me.
Alrighty. So then I guess let's shift our attention to the other series, and I'm going to start off with your text you sent me. I hate the Celtics.
I just
Listen,
can't stand. I can't stand watching. I guess Tatum is the guy that makes me the most distraught when I watch him. I just like. There's been a ton of talk about where he fits in the hierarchy, and we've been saying it now for.
Listen, he
I don't
didn't
even
win
know.
the MVP in the Eastern
I
Conference, did
know.
he? Come
No, he
on, in
didn't.
the
Jalen
Eastern
Brown.
Conference.
The question
Jalen
is like
Brown.
I want to go back. I wish we could just. I wish we our crack staff could figure it out, but I don't know when we first started talking about the fact that Jason Tatum was a second tier superstar, that he was never going to be
You about it. You
on the
Freudian
level.
slip there, Mike. You
Yeah,
Freudian slip.
exactly. I just don't know when that was that we started talking about the fact that he just wasn't as good as the very best guys in the league. And I still stand in that same spot where if I need a basket or I need a big play to be made, Jason Tatum is pretty far down the list of guys that I want to go to. And he's had, look, him and Jalen Brown have had a tremendous amount of success. And Boston's been in 6 of the last 8 Eastern Conference Finals. And I know Tatum, whatever, yesterday he put up 36, 10, and 6 or whatever he did. But when I watched the fact that Boston was basically down 3 out of those 4 games to Indiana in the fourth quarter, I think I heard today that at some point during the fourth quarter of those 3 games that Indiana had a 90% odds of winning the game, and they just kicked away multiple games. And you're talking about the last couple without Tyrese Halliburton. I don't know. I mean, maybe you could say Boston just looks across the court and is like, we're playing Indiana. They're not very good. Now we're playing Indiana. They're not very good. And they don't have Halliburton. And maybe the motivation is less. I have a hard time kind of believing that. I mean, I guess you can say you play down or play up to the level of your competition. But I don't know. This Boston team, they're going to have to play a lot better. I don't care which team comes out of the West. The way that these 3 teams are playing right now, there's no way based on the way that they're playing at this moment that anybody could pick Boston. Now you can look at Boston's body of work over the course of the season and make the case, but I just think the level of intensity that's the Western Conference playoffs have been played at compared to what Boston has experienced. I mean, you can make an honest case that Boston hasn't played a real meaningful game for 2 months, if not longer. And all of a sudden you're going to throw Porzingis back in the mix, and these guys are going to have to play at, maybe they were playing at 90% capacity, and all of a sudden they're going to have to be at 105. I don't know, man.
Yeah, I can't envision Boston winning this championship. And at the same time, Mike, the last time you said I just can't see them doing it was Golden State 2 years ago. So I'm
Yeah,
dreading.
They ended up playing the Celtics though, so that certainly helped them. But I didn't see that coming either. I didn't see that coming. I mean, I don't think anybody really believed that Golden State could get that title. And like I said, I think you look back on that, and that title becomes weirder and more fluky every time you really look at it. When you
Yeah.
look at what Golden State was before that, you look at what they've been after. You look at Andrew Wiggins, who turned into a completely different player than what he's been
future
at any point in his
Cavalier.
career. Andrew Wiggins.
There's a rumor mill.
How's Andrew Wiggins getting to the Cavs?
Wiggins for Garland or something.
Wiggins for Garland. Oh my God! Why would the Cavs? If the Cavs do that, I mean, they might as well hire me and you to be general managers. I mean, come on, that's horrendous. That would be a horrendous trade. Horrendous.
I'm just telling you what the streets were saying today. I saw that.
Right, well, good luck with the streets. I don't want to
Twitter
listen.
streets.
I don't want to listen to the streets. I'll pass on hearing from the streets.
But yeah, so anyways, so back to the task at hand here. Listen, Indiana was completely decimated again in the fact that they didn't have Tyrese Halliburton. We've already alluded to the fact that there was a huge canyon between the 2 teams. Rick Carlisle, there should be a documentary expose done in the vein of The Last Dance about what the hell he's been doing in the last 5 minutes of those games, because it's coaching malpractice. It was almost like I thought maybe JB Bickerstaff, the spirit of JB Bickerstaff, inherited his body, and he just didn't know how to coach a team. And listen, I've always thought Rick Carlisle is a pretty good coach. Like I've never really thought, oh
Yeah,
man,
I agree. Oh, I
but
agree.
this this series did not help his case. There were there were two games they fumbled away because of Rick Carlisle. Legitimately fumbled the ball away. Game one they should have won. He doesn't call a timeout when they can't inbound the basketball. Game three they should have won. Completely blew it. And even the game yesterday, like they were there in the end, and he just there was a timeout he didn't call that he should have called, and then what uh, the play he drew up was that game three play that he drew up a Madden verticals run. Like he freaking ran
That
it,
was
drew it.
game.
That was
That
game
was game
three
two. Was it game three? Yeah, you're right. That was game three. You're right.
because it was in Indiana. He threw up Madden verticals and had the guys run verticals, and he got the guy open. But why is the guy who's been the best player on the floor the inbounder in that play? That's mind blowing to me. That's mind blowing. That's like the play that David Blatt drew up for LeBron. And LeBron said, "Scratch that play. I'm running this play," and then he ran his own thing. Like, why wouldn't the players be like, "Wait a second. Why is the guy who's got 28 points? I think he had 28 points at the time. Why is he inbounding the guy who hasn't hit a three all game to shoot a three?" Because they ran that play for him. I like it much more than what ended up happening. I don't know. But
Neesmith got the
regardless,
shot at
yeah,
Neesmith
Neesmith.
got that shot.
The bottom line is this: Boston was winning that series no matter what. Like there was multiple things working against Indiana. There was a talent gap. There's also called the NBA doesn't want the Indiana Pacers in the NBA Finals over the Boston Celtics. Okay, just listen. I'll call it what it is. Call it what it is. They didn't want that
All
to
right.
happen.
I don't know if I'd go. I don't know if I'd go that far, man. If
Oh,
you're
come
Indiana,
on. Come on,
look,
Pacers. Get out of here.
I'm not saying that
You're
the
about to
league
offer
doesn't want.
Pascal Siakam a max contract. Have fun with that. That's going to be successful for the
You don't
long
want
term.
you don't want Pascal Siakam at age 30 on a 5-year, $200 million
No,
deal. Is that what you're
get
saying?
out of here with that. What a joke.
Okay,
I mean,
that's
listen,
fine.
Siakam's a good player, but a max contract, you're tied to that. Like, who's trading that? Who's trading for that? You know what that smells like, Mike? That
What's that? What
smells
does
like
it
that
smell like?
John Wall contract all over again. I'm
No,
ready to
I think
say,
Siakam's better than that. Siakam's better than
oh
Wall,
yeah.
and Siakam's been durable. I mean, he hasn't
How is he
missed.
better than John Wall? He's not been in a. No one's named Pascal Siakam in a rap. Come on, John Wall had a rap all about him. Mike, come on.
Siakam, okay, Siakam's more durable. Siakam's a better bet than John Wall was at that point in his career. But look, I don't care if Indiana's good or they're not good in the future. They're basically you're tying yourself to Halliburton, and then you're hoping that you get lucky with somebody else. And Siakam, if Siakam's your third guy, you're okay. They're still one, or they're still one guy away. Whether that you want to say that's your number two or your number three, whatever, they're still a guy away from legitimately being able to compete. I think if you're Indiana, you have to look at it and you have to say, was Tyrese Halliburton's struggles all due to the hamstring injury that he suffered, whatever, a third of the way into the season, where he just wasn't the same after he came back? Is he, when he comes back healthy, going to be like the guy he was for the first 6 or 8 weeks of the season? If he is, then you do have a guy who you can build your team around. If he's somewhere in between that guy and the guy that he was in the second half of the season in the playoffs, then you've got yourself a good player, but he's not your number one guy if he's going to play at that level. So I don't know. Look, Indiana, when you try to project it out going forward, like they had Jerace Walker that they drafted. What, I think they drafted him number 7. Guy never played, and you got to hit on those picks. Not that every team is perfect, but if you're going to take that step, I think if I'm looking at Indiana, the comp for them is when Trae Young in Atlanta got to the conference finals against the Bucks the year they won the title, and then since then they've kind of fallen back into mediocrity. And when I look at the Pacers, I see a team to me that's in danger of that same thing being the case, because you look going into next season, right? And you're trying to project the Eastern Conference, Boston clearly is still going to be number one. You're probably going to project Milwaukee, I would think, still ahead of them with a healthy Giannis and
Yeah.
Dame. You're probably going to project the Knicks ahead of them. You're probably going to project the Sixers with Maxey and Embiid and whoever they sign into their
Paul
cap
George.
space or whatever. Yeah, I mean, whoever it is, they're going to get somebody. I mean, I don't know if they're going to get Paul George or they're going to get LeBron or what they're going to do, but they're going to do something in that spot. So you're going to project Philly ahead of them. The Cavs are clearly going to do something, and I'm not so sure that if you're just looking at it, are you going to project Indiana ahead of the Cavs? I mean, maybe depending on what the Cavs do. Orlando, you're going to pick this Indiana team over what Orlando has as a core, and Orlando has cap space where they can maybe get a guard in there who can shoot the ball. And suddenly Franz and Paolo are a year older. I think I'd project Orlando ahead of them. Miami's probably going to retool. I mean, to me, Indiana doesn't project as the second best team in the Eastern Conference next year. Like, I could easily see them being a team that gets knocked out in the first round next season, and they're being right there in the 6, 7, 8 range where they were this year. So, look, Indiana played really, really hard, and they just couldn't finish games, and that comes down to when you don't have as many guys. Boston, as much as I want to say that Tatum is not a top whatever number player in the league, which he's not, but Boston has 4 or 5 dudes that can all make big shots and make plays in the moment. Derek White hits the game winner yesterday off the pass from Jaylen Brown. And Brown had the block against Nembhard, followed by the little step through that easily could have been called a travel. And then the drive into the lane where he kicks it and finds White in the corner for the game-winning 3. Boston just has lots of different ways that they can score. If Boston was a little smarter or a little bit more disciplined or a little bit better coached, I don't know which one it is, but Indiana shouldn't have been able to hang with them really, honestly, at all. But when I watch the crunch time of all those games, I'm like, where do they go to get a basket? Like, who do you just give the ball to? And look, Nembhard hit the game winner that kind of saved their playoff run against the Knicks in game 3. And then he played really, really well. But again, Nembhard was basically a backup that played. He probably averaged 20 minutes a game during the regular season.
Yeah.
And he played great, don't get me wrong. And if you're Indiana, you got to be thrilled with his development. But I like my chances with Boston's big 4 plus Al Horford hanging out in the corner, trying to generate a good shot versus Andrew Nembhard trying to go one-on-one against either whatever one of the Boston defenders
Listen,
you want to throw at him.
listen, when we were at game 3 and we watched Al Horford take a bunch of terrible shots, we were roasting him pretty good, Mike. But I give him credit. They won game 3 because of Al Horford, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when
he had 7 threes, right?
Yeah, I mean, when you knock down that many threes, I mean, it's hard. If a role player is going to hit 6 or 7 threes, it's hard to lose one of those games. Now, Minnesota did it when Naz Reid hit 6 or 7, but then Naz Reid had that shot at the buzzer after Luka's step back in game 2. Naz Reid's shot looked like it was about to hit the bottom of the net too, and just rimmed off the back. But yeah, if you're role players, if a guy makes 6 or 7 threes like Horford did or like Naz Reid, it's hard to. You're going to be right there. It's hard to lose a game when a role player is going to do that.
Yeah. So I guess I don't know where Indiana goes from here because it's not like they're going to be. They're not going to be.
Their team is their team. I mean, I guess they have some potentially. Maybe they have some guys that they could trade. I know Obi Toppin's a free agent. I can't remember. I think he might be restricted, but you're gonna have to sign him. I don't know. Like, I heard lots of people praising Obi Toppin, that they liked what they saw, and I guess he had moments, but I don't know, man. He doesn't defend anybody, and he's got a lot of Karl Anthony Towns in him on offense where he just starts going, his limbs are flailing around, and I have no idea what he's going to do. I'm just, I don't know. I'm not a big Obi Toppin guy. If I was Indiana, I would not be in a hurry to pay him a lot of money. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
I'd much rather pay Siakam than pay Obi Toppin. I know they're not going to make anywhere near the same amount of money, but I'd much rather have Siakam on my team than Toppin.
Yep. I agree, I guess. Not saying that's not really saying a lot. I'm not a big Siakam guy.
I'm not a huge Siakam fan either necessarily, but I do think that look, if he's your third best player, you're okay. If he's your second best player, you're not going to get where you want to go if he's your second best player. If he's your third, I could live with that. I could live with that piece of it.
Yep. All right, Mike. Anything else on these games? I mean, I guess we really just have to kind of we're in a wait and see pattern. I guess that's probably when we have. Well, we'll have to reconvene we definitely will reconvene before the finals start because the finals don't start till next Thursday. So we'll have our other NBA pod next week before the finals start. Anything else on those games, those series that we've talked about tonight, Mike?
Nothing else that really jumps out at me. I think that it'll be this Minnesota and Dallas series each one of these games has been super compelling. And I do think that when you look at it, it's going to come down to me, Edwards he's got to get back to the level he was in the first 5 games of this Denver series. And if he can get back to that level or something close to that, Minnesota's got a chance to come back. Like you said, it's going to take a lot of things to go right for them to be able to win this series, but I think they can get game 5 and then you go back, like I said, to game 6 and who knows? Dallas feels a little bit of pressure and Minnesota plays well, and all of a sudden you're in a game 7 and you're at home. And so the path is there. The path is there for Minnesota to get back into this series. But who knows? It's been an adventure certainly for Towns. And it feels like Edwards maybe has turned a corner these last 2 games where I feel pretty confident he's going to have at least a good game 5. Whether or not he can go supernova, which is what they might need in order to get game 5 and get this thing back to Dallas, that remains to be seen. But I give Minnesota at least maybe even better than a puncher's chance, just because the fact that they got 2 of the last 3 at home.
All right, I hope it for my basketball sanity. I'm hoping that we've got something compelling because I don't know what I'm going to do with myself tomorrow night. There's no Survivor. There's no NBA like on a Wednesday night. What's going on here?
You have to watch baseball. You might have to watch the Spiders, the Cleveland Spiders?
It's not the Cleveland Spiders, Mike. I think the Gardos play in the afternoon tomorrow anyway, so that's not.
Are they playing the Milwaukee Braves?
No, they're playing the Colorado Rockies, Mike.
Oh, the Colorado Rockies. When did Colorado get a team?
Pretty sure 93. I legitimately think it's 93. Hold on, I'm gonna Google that right now because I want to see if I know that right. I want to see
1993. That's impressive.
Were the Rockies baseball team history of the dang, I was off.
When was it?
91.
91. Oh, I'm sorry, man.
It's still kind of impressive. I was
Can
pretty.
we do a quick? Can we end with a quiz?
Oh, you got a quiz for me?
Yeah, I got a quiz for you.
All right, go ahead.
All right, name a baseball player from this team. Ready? The Baltimore Orioles.
The Baltimore Orioles. Hold on.
Time's up. Boston Red Sox.
Boston Red Sox. I can do this. Rafael Devers.
The Yankees.
Judge. That's easy.
Tampa Bay.
They've got the guy that was our first baseman. And we traded him away.
Toronto Blue Jays.
Yeah.
Chicago White Sox.
Oh, they have Mike Clevenger. Mike Clevenger. They got Mike Clevenger.
All right. Okay. All right. Detroit Tigers.
Detroit Tigers. They don't have Miguel Cabrera. He retired. They've got
Kansas City Royals.
Salvador Perez.
Okay. Minnesota Twins. You could be just making up names from Latin America. Go ahead. Minnesota Twins.
Minnesota Twins.
Houston Astros.
Oh, Jose Altuve. You know that name. You know that name.
Altuve, I know. He's a little short guy.
Angels? Mike Trout.
Yeah. Okay. The A's.
Oh, okay, they're terrible.
Mariners.
Ichiro's not on the team anymore.
Neither is Ken Griffey Jr. The Texas Rangers.
Texas Rangers. Oh, they have Max Scherzer. He's injured though right now.
Didn't they win the World Series? The
They
Texas
did.
Rangers in the last
They
year
did.
or two.
They won
Was
last
that
year.
last year? Did
Yeah,
they?
they won. Yeah.
Man, if you'd have told 10-year-old me that someday a team would win the World Series and I wouldn't know one player from their team, that would be pretty shocking to me. All right, we're not going to do the National League, but yeah, I don't think we're doing
Mike,
the
do you know
baseball podcast
do you
anytime
know about the change in the Major League Baseball scheduling?
to change what I saw.
They play you play every team this year. Like you don't there's
Oh,
no
really?
yeah, so they made it so that you're playing every team,
Okay.
and the only teams you play, like you play every team 6 times at
Okay.
least, and
Okay.
then your teams in your division you play more, but you play them less than you used to play them. So instead of playing like Detroit like 17 times, we pay them like 12 or 13
Okay.
instead of playing. So it spices it up. Instead of it being interleague and you only play 4 teams from the National League, and then we have the Ohio Cup where we play it against the Reds. I think it's a good change. I think it's something that I don't know what the NBA schedule is going to look like in a few years, but I think it's something that they need to kind of like reconsider how they're doing their scheduling. I think it's going to be nice because you're going to have playing teams. I'm kind of bummed though, because our division's always been pretty, like we've always pretty much dominated our division, the Guardians. But
yeah. So are you playing half your games? Like, are you playing half the National League?
No, you're playing more. You're
half...
playing more. Yeah, you play each. I think you play each. I believe you play each team home and away. So you play like now some teams you're going to play 6 times, and some teams you're going to play 7. I think it might even be 5, 6, or 7, depending on how the breakdown is. And it's still 162 games. So,
all right, I got you. All right, interesting. I had no idea whatsoever. So you did better on the quiz than I would have. So
yeah, I'm really mad that Yan Gomes is on Tampa Bay. I'm really mad I forgot him. And Yandy Diaz, he's the other guy on the Tampa Bay Rays. I'm really mad that I missed.
Hey. All right, well, that's all right. I put a lot of time pressure on you, so it's all good.
New York Mets, Mike?
We did this one already. Lindor.
There you go. Look at you. Good job. Not the chocolate.
Hey, well, you quiz me on the National League. Go.
Philadelphia Phillies.
Lenny Dykstra.
No, Bryce Harper's on Phillies.
Okay.
Dodgers.
Ohtani.
Good job. Cubs.
I got nothing. Ryan Sandberg.
Colorado Rockies.
Nope.
Arizona Diamondbacks. I couldn't tell you anyone on the freaking Arizona.
You don't even know the teams, man.
No, Atlanta Braves. Atlanta Braves.
Greg Maddux.
No, how about? Come on, let me see if you can name this based on
Dale Murphy. Wait, Julio Franco.
Let me see if you can name this Atlanta Brave based on my trivia fact. Left-handed pitcher.
Aroldis Chapman.
No, left-handed pitcher.
Ron Guidry.
No, dominated by the Indians when he played for the White Sox.
Tom Seaver. No, he's a righty.
Chris Sale.
Nice.
You recognize that name? Right. Do you know that name?
Yeah, didn't he play for the Red Sox for a while?
He played for the Red Sox and was terrible. And this year he's like 10-1 with a 2.2 ERA.
Nice. Something really Chris Sale. Yeah. Comeback player of the year, man.
Yeah.
Cast your ballots now.
All right, Mike. I think we've had enough baseball.
That's more than I've thought about Major League Baseball.
Are the Browns moving to Brook Park? We may as well talk football. Are the Browns moving to Brook Park?
Well, maybe. I don't know.
Do you want them to move to Brook Park?
Hey, Kamal. It doesn't matter to me. I've only been to one Browns game in my life. So, hey, Kamal, who was our last guest on the previous episode, he texted me. He's like, I love this podcast. He's like, you should be on ESPN. You're the next Roy Firestone. And then I'm like, hey, man, use your contacts. He's like, can you talk Browns? I'm like, I can talk anything you want, man. Put me on ESPN. I'm ready.
Listen, I could talk Browns. I feel very good about talking Browns. I feel good about talking about Guardians, Browns, any Cleveland sports. I feel really good about talking. I think I could sit here and
Yeah.
you couldn't name the starting. You couldn't name any players on the Indians, right? Other than Jose Ramirez. Guardians, I should say.
Let me think. Who else? Do we still have that Oscar guy?
No, he's been
gone.
been in the minors. First
He's
baseman,
gone?
you couldn't name him.
No,
Josh Naylor.
no. Don't they have another? Don't they have his brother?
They do his catcher, Bo Naylor. Could you name the?
Okay.
You name the second baseman who won the Platinum Glove last year?
Don't we have Justin Bieber, or is he hurt?
No, Shane Bieber.
Oh.
Justin Bieber's the singer.
What?
Justin Bieber's a singer.
So,
baby.
He can still play baseball.
No, the second baseman, our second baseman won the Gold Glove and the Platinum Glove last year. That means he's the best fielder in Major League Baseball.
What was that guy's name? Jason. What was his name? Keltner.
Not Kipnis.
Jason Kipnis. We don't have him anymore.
No, it's Andres Jimenez.
Oh,
he's
really?
the guy we got for Frankie. We traded Frankie for Andres Jimenez, and he's gone on to.
How old is Kipnis now? Is he still in the league?
No, he retired last year.
I feel like he's like 26. I feel like he's a rookie, like this year. How many years did he play with the Indians?
I think 6, and then he went to the Cubs after we lost him in the World Series. He played like 2 more years, and then he went to the Cubs for like 2 years, and then he was hanging around the minors for a while. No outfielders. You can't name any outfielders for the Guardians.
Oh, they got that Steve Kwan, right? Kwan?
Yeah, well, he's on rehab assignments right now.
Okay.
He got hurt, pulled his hammy.
Yeah, that's all I got.
Tyler Freeman.
No, I got nothing.
How about this name? It's going to make you think of a Browns quarterback.
Okay.
Jason Fry.
Don't know.
He's leading the league, leading the majors in OPS right now.
I only know our hoopheads guest, Jason Fry. Shout out, Jay, if you're listening.
Or it's David Fry. That's why I said Jason Fry. It's David Fry.
All right,
Jason Fry. Jason Fry, if you want to join the Guardians team, we will invite you as well. So, all right, we've definitely talked way too much baseball tonight, Mike.
We might just have to cut out the entire baseball section. I don't even know if I want to edit this. All right. At any rate, we are done with NBA talk, MLB talk, NFL talk. Do you want to talk? I don't know what else can we talk
Caitlin
about.
Clark?
WNBA. Caitlin Clark. WNBA.
Have you paid any attention to WNBA or not?
There's a chance I might be going to the game Thursday.
Which game is that?
Fever, Seattle. What are they? The Storm.
You're driving all the way out there. Would your daughter want to go?
Maybe. Yeah, she really wants to go.
What's the get-in price? Did you look?
There's a chance. Well, yeah, it depends on. I mean, you can get in for like $8. She wants to sit somewhere where she can maybe get some autographs. So that would bump me up to like $45 a ticket.
Oh, that's doable. So, come on, Mike. It's for your daughter. It's for your daughter.
Oh, man.
Come on.
I've been trying to put it off for a while now, but it looks like I might end up.
Just do it. Rub the Band-Aid. Have a father-daughter bonding moment because I'm sure Margaret's not going, right?
No, it's just it'll just be me and Mads. So.
Oh, come on. That sounds like a great day. Come on, man.
Plus we got Minnesota Dallas that night. So.
Don't listen. Come on. What's more important, Minnesota Dallas or your daughter? Come on.
My daughter's more important.
There you go. Exactly.
I get it. So we'll see. But I think that might be in the cards for Thursday. So we'll see. But yeah, I mean, she had 30 tonight and they lost. I know that. So
yeah, she's been pretty good. I mean, she's had her ups and downs. She's a rookie and she's got to get through things. So, anyways,
it's tough to go right from your college season immediately to your pro season.
It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. We were joking in our basketball chat. Like we have like 2 weeks to prepare for middle school girls basketball, and the season starts. That's kind of how I feel like the WNBA was like. You got 2 weeks, figure it out. And
there's no way around it. I mean, they have to, based on where their season is. I mean, there's just nothing you can do about it. But the other thing we didn't talk about is and I don't want to talk about it now, but maybe it's another episode that we talk about at some point, is the NCAA and just, hey, forget it, man. Let's just pay people. So that'll be. I think that's a topic we'll have to talk about at some point.
And I thought you were gonna say, rest in peace, Bill Walton. We didn't talk about that either.
Yeah, I mean, again, one of the legendary figures of modern pro basketball. I mean, in so many ways, just with his personality, his performance on the floor, sort of the what if nature of his career, and then what he did, obviously, as a broadcaster and a public personality. Yeah, I mean, rest in peace, Bill, for sure.
Yeah. All right. I think we're done.
Let's end it there. Yeah, I think we're done. All right. Thanks everyone for listening tonight. We really appreciate it. And we will catch you on our next episode. Thanks.